after Saturn had have been told by his engines, he decided to set up a mission to figure out what this creature was doing on the island. When he saw the picture, he thought it was photoshopped, even though it wasn't. A few days later, more more people were being attacked, and only two were fatal. So Tom Hat was getting concerned about what was happening. So basically, they called to the outside world. The United States had decided to give him technology to help him stop this creature. So they all set up cameras around the island and even places that no one has even dared to set foot into. So basically, they set him up there, and then one of them have found a cave. So they decided to go into this cave, and then they saw something very, very disturbing. Inside the cave were dead bodies and bones of the victims, of people, children, animals, and even the livestock. They were so surprised, but yet so disgusted. So Tom had looked for himself, and he was very, very disturbed by what he saw. But then they all heard a weird munching noise in the back of the cave. They quietly went in, and then they were and they saw something that shook them all to the core. In front, with the light shining bright, the giant Utahraptor was eating Sir Tom Hat's wife and his grandkids. The grandkids were in the corner. One of them was already killed. The daughter was the only one who survived. They quickly tried to get to lure her. They tried to get her out, but the Utahraptor was already knew they were there, but pretended not to care. So as this giant Utahraptor was feasting on whatever was left of Lady Hat, munching, tearing out the intestines, spinal cord, and ripping off limbs. So delicious, the creature said in a evil voice. After so many of millions of years passed, this is what the mammals have become. So pathetic, he said in a very evil voice. They quickly got Saturnhat's granddaughter out, but just as one of the workers was about to come back, the munching stopped and the creature turned back and looked at the soldier. It stood up at an upright position, looking down on the pathetic people who invaded the cave. They didn't move. They didn't scream. They couldn't even make a sudden move. One wrong move, and the creature would attack. It was a standoff, but after 2 minutes, the soldier couldn't stand anymore and then fell. The creature, they tried. The creature looked, but discontinued to stare at them all menacingly with the dead soul eyes. The soldier tried to move, but then he screamed in pain. The lights were off, but then when it switched back on, the Utahraptor was on the soldier's back. It looked down, and then it pierced his dew claw into his back. The soldier was screaming in pain as it cut down his back. Everyone was watching in horror. The man was screaming in agony, begging for it to end. Then the creature looked down and said to him, Not very strong now, aren't you? He he said in the soldier's eyes and his ear. I thought you were more powerful than this, he said. But then, before the soldier couldn't say anything, the Utahraptor bit down his head with its jaws, then picked him up. He knew it was over, and he was waiting for the sweet release of death. Then, a loud snap. It echoed through the cave and into the stations. It was so loud that it almost made Satanhat's granddaughter go deaf, but thankfully she could still hear after the incident. But then the soldier was no longer alive. He was alive. Then a loud rip, and it was sure. The Utahraptor ripped the soldier's head clean off his body. Then, with its strong bite, crushed it. Then they all had to back away slowly as the creature looked at them. Then they got out and decided to stop there. By the nightfall, they had to capture what was happening to the livestock and to the people. They saw how this creature lured the people and the animals in, even though it's supposed to be sounded like a normal dinosaur. This one was no ordinary dinosaur. What happened to him? Said the Fat Controller. Then he remembered the two incidents prior. He remembered what he had done in the Shed 17 and the Fallout incident. He put the pieces together and realized it was normally a normal lizard, but then it got eaten by a bird. But then the bird mutated, and the bird died, but the lizard mutated into this creature. The engines heard about what was going on, and they all had no idea what to do. But then, in the broad daylight, the creature was right behind Sir Tom Hat. It picked him up, and then it slashed his stomach right open, and his guts fell out. Sir Tom Hat couldn't even scream. The engines were looking at what was happening to their leader. Then he fell on his knees and then on all fours, trying to get his intestines back into his body so he can get a chance to make it to the hospital. But eventually, he couldn't even know what was going on. But then, all of a sudden, there was a pain in both sides of his head. Then he realized his head was in its jaws. It picked him up at the highest point where the creature could stand upright. And then it looked at the engines. The engines looked back in horror. He was about to snap, but then Gordon came in, which spooked the creature so much. He dropped Sir Tom Hat and ran away, leaving nothing but a blood trail leading back to its cave. Thank you, Gordon, said Thomas. Gordon was surprised, but then when he saw what was happening, he was in shock. He couldn't say anything. He just looked at the body of Sir Tom Hat. Eventually, they got him to the hospital, where apparently he did survive. But they had to remove some of his intestines, and then some parts of his brain